So we're gonna get started here. I am just thrilled to be introducing our two roundtables today. As you know, we reimagined our Board of Trustees meetings. We want to bring panel discussions forth, not only for the trustees to engage with these conversations, but with all of you as well. And welcome to our studio audience. We're glad that you took time to be with us today in that virtual environment. And most appreciation goes to ASF-MRA, the American Society of Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers. Brian, you and your team are beyond compare. Thank you for sharing your owl and giving us the ability to reach a wider audience. We really appreciate it. So our first panel this afternoon, I could not be more excited to introduce. These are our first PAREA graduates. Welcome. You're going to learn more about Lisa and Chris, and we're so happy that Sandy Amadas, the current president of the Appraisal Institute, is with us to moderate this panel. Sandy was instrumental in building AI PAREA. This Board of Trustees invested in AI PAREA, and I can tell you that investment was worth it. As these newest graduates come onto our profession, they are blazing the trail for the thousands that will come behind them, and that they're going to turn around and help up through this path. So without further ado, and again, thank you for indulging us in being a little late today. Sandy, the floor is all yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Kelly, for that. And welcome, and thank everybody for attending today. I'm sure you're going to hear some exciting things from our two participants here. I am so excited to be able to host this panel discussion today. First two AI PAREA graduates. I like to put that in, AI PAREA graduates. This is a tremendous achievement you guys have done. You were kind of like the guinea pigs. You were the first ones to go through, so you found all our hiccups there for us and got them corrected for the next ones coming along. So I want to be one of the first ones to congratulate you and welcome you to this wonderful profession. I hope you find it as rewarding as it has been to me. So with that, I'll give you a round of applause. So Chris and Lisa, I want to start off by asking you to give me a little bit about your background and what drew you to the valuation profession and to PAREA. So Lisa, you want to start?
Sure. Hi, my name is Lisa, and I actually started in real estate, gosh, more than 25 years ago. I started on the sales side from the back end, doing a lot of admin work for several top risk agents. And then I had kids. And I made the decision to stay at home with them. And I homeschooled them from pre-K all the way through high school. And my daughter is just finishing her senior year. So as she's been finishing, I was thinking, you know, what am I gonna do? Well, I love math, I love logic, and I love real estate. And my husband is in the mortgage industry as well. So he made the suggestion that I might enjoy appraising. Well, we live in a smaller town in South Carolina. And so there aren't very many mentors available. And so this was right about the time when PAREA was just starting to get going, and they were about to start, and I looked into it and I contacted Appraisal Institute, and I was one of the first ones to get into the pilot. So I was very excited. So that's kind of my background and how I ended up here.
And it sounds like Lisa's very motivated because she's homeschooled her kids. So I'll give her a lot of credit for that. Chris, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Chris Tyndall. I'm a military spouse. father of a 3-year-old boy. And my majority of my professional background has been in nonprofit sector, primarily working with youth. Education, I got my bachelor's in business administration and an MBA with concentration in finance after that. My wife is in the Air Force, and her first station was in San Antonio. So about 2.5 years ago, we moved to San Antonio so she could start her medical residency. So after that move, I kind of decided that I would take a step back from work and kind of be the stay-at-home parent at that point. So for about 2 years, I was doing that. During that time, I met an appraiser that was local. He kind of talked to me about the field. And it kind of sounded like it would be something that would kind of fit both my background and what my interests were. Growing up, my dad is a self-employed contractor. So most of my summers were either working with him growing up before high school, and then after that, working construction, built trusses for a few summers as well. So all of that kind of brought me into the real estate kind of realm. And I was kind of looking for what would be the best fit for me. And I think appraisal might be that. And then as far as PAREA, I was actually in the process of signing paperwork with the appraiser that I had been in contact locally. And I was signing employment paperwork, and then we realized that he didn't have the 3 years experience required to bring him to training. So kind of stepped back from that and was trying to find some solutions rather than just wait a year and a half. And found PAREA just doing research on my own. And after verifying that it was a legitimate thing, people at my company that I would eventually work for, didn't know about it either somehow. So I verified that it was real, got the go ahead. They actually helped pay for it initially. And as soon as I found out it was a real thing, I hopped on my qualifying education and dove right into PAREA once I finished that. And it was a great thing for me as the primary caretaker for a then 2-year-old, very flexible as far as work schedule. Kind of being able to build my own time and figure out when I can progress and learn on my own kind of scale. So it was very beneficial for me as opposed to the normal training route. So,
Chris, I want to thank you and your wife for your service to our country. You guys are both very impressive. So how we're going to do this panel is I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then we're going to open it up for the audience. So if the audience would hold your questions to the end, we'll give you a chance to ask them some questions that maybe I didn't. Now, I promised them I would not ask them to define the breakdown method, how to externalize the lessons or anything like that. So you can relax a little bit there. So first, let's start off with, can you describe to me, each of you, what were the benefits of PAREA and what were the biggest challenges that you found in working through the program? Chris, you want to start?
sure. I think the biggest benefit was just my dedicated mentor. Found out we both had the same one. So it makes sense that she had a good experience as well. Brianna was my mentor, decades of experience in the field, owned her own company. So she was a great resource as far as, what it looks like on the outside, any problems or issues that I had or questions about concepts, methodologies, any of that stuff. She was a great sounding board. We kind of steered me in the right direction. And it would have been a lot harder to do without her as my mentor. The other thing was, as opposed to the qualifying education, we were really taking deep dives into concepts and methodologies. So the qualifying education, we were doing a lot of terminology, we were looking at definitions, concepts rather than practicing anything. So this was very beneficial, and this is what the real world is going to be like. This is what report writing is going to be like. This is kind of how we put into practice the methodologies that we've discussed in the building blocks of qualifying education. Challenges, initially the biggest one was just report writing. As a layman in that field, it was a foreign language. I had never done report writing. In the qualifying education, I think I saw a report once or twice. So going into it blind was just figure it out. Obviously mentors were a great help, but yeah, that was a big hurdle initially, just kind of figuring out what the report writing looks like, what are the steps we need to take, all that kind of stuff was brand new. And then the second challenge would be just the final assignments portion of it. Like you said, we were one of the first ones in there, we were guinea pigs, I knew that, you know, there was gonna be some hiccups along the way, there was gonna be materials that maybe had a few kinks in them. So the initial 10 assignments or reports, I got done in about 5 months. And then the final 3 assignments took about 3 months. So it was a lot longer of a time frame than expected, but again, I was one of the first 1 or 2 in there, so I knew it was gonna be kind of a process. And I'm sure a lot of that stuff's been hammered out since I think I graduated or got done with the course the end of May. So we've had some time to grow and build, and hopefully my hiccups were beneficial for the people coming down there.
Hope they were too. So, the last 3 you did on your own without the help of Brianna.
Yes.
So that's why it took you a little longer to do those last 3, but that you passed them, so that's great. Chris, Lisa, would you like to share?
So to copy what Chris was saying, definitely my mentor was, Brianna was just wonderful. She was so knowledgeable and really helped me to understand the different concepts, different, you know, just the different parts of the appraisal process. And it's more than just writing a report. It's, you know, you're appraising. And I would say that was the biggest benefit, was having Brianna there. I would say a benefit and a challenge would be each assignment was in a different geographic region and market as well. And so that was challenging to kind of, you know, pivot and work on new markets, both geographically, and they're all retrospective appraisals as well. So that was interesting too, to see different markets as well. But that was a benefit and a challenge, I would say, so.
Yeah. That's great information you just gave us. And, you know, what you just said, Lisa, is something that people ask often. How can they learn geographical experience, or how can they learn markets? You learned to do market analysis in a lot of different geographical areas, didn't you?
Yeah.
So that's great. So my next question for you is, tell me, at what point in PAREA did you finally feel like, wow, I'm really learning some good practical skills that I'm going to be able to use? Was it like your 3rd case study or last case studies? At what point did you feel that, or did you ever feel that? I'm hoping you did. Lisa?
Well, for me, it was pretty immediate. In the first assignment, Brianna had taught me how to use Excel in order to do a regression analysis. And that really clicked with me, like, wow, this is so cool. I love it because I love math. And this is just so awesome. And then also I would say, looking back, once I had got to the final assignments, looking back on my prior 10 assignments and seeing the progress that was made in my report writing, my analysis, and everything, it clicked with me like, wow, I made some progress here. This is really neat. So
I hope you'll always feel that way when you look back at your assignments from years ago. You're saying there's been progress, if not, maybe. But Chris, I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, I don't know if there was one moment that I can pinpoint. Throughout the course, I was in contact with the appraiser that I mentioned a couple times. So I would just kind of pick his brain about things. Have you seen this? Do you know about this? What are your thoughts about, hey, take a look at this report. Does this make sense to you? So throughout those conversations, it was pretty clear to me that I was on the right path and I was having practical application for things that I would use in the real world after the fact. Additionally, going back to the mentor, again, she was very good at kind of bolstering your confidence when you actually figured out a concept. So if, I had nailed something, she would be very, very vocal and, hey, I think you understand this pretty thoroughly. I think you can teach this in this one specific aspect. So maybe don't worry about this as much in the future. Let's work on these things. So she was a big, also focal point and kind of bolstering confidence in that.
Yeah, everybody needs to be kind of go back with the line, right?
Yeah.
Well, my next question is not too hard, I don't think. I'm gonna ask you what would you advise other participants that are thinking about PAREA? What would you advise them to do or to think about before they enter PAREA? Chris?
So the first thing I would do is just to treat it like a job. So set your schedule ahead of time, treat it like it's your full-time job. If you have a full-time job, I was, again, a stay-at-home parent, so my full-time job was that, and then my part-time job was, hey, once he goes to sleep, let's carve out 3-4 hours for me to do this, keep my head down, get some work done, maybe get a couple hours in the morning before he wakes up. So treat it like a job, set a schedule. The other thing is entering the program, I would say, discuss with your mentor at the very beginning, what are your goals and expectations, specifically around timelines for assignments. I was pretty gung-ho when I got in there. And there's kind of hard stops within your reports. So once you progress to like step 4 in the appraisal process, there's a hard stop. You have to have a conversation with your mentor. And the first day I had got to my hard stop already. And I think she was thinking that was an anomaly and that was kind of the pace I wanted to go at. So I think kind of being upfront with, hey, I would like to get through this at a certain time period, and they can let you know, hey, that's realistic, that's not realistic. And then the final thing would just be, don't be afraid to ask a bunch of questions. We're all coming into this process brand new, nobody's been in training and entering this program, so we don't have any experience other than our qualifying education. And that's more of book learning, getting the answer right, moving on. So asking a bunch of questions, not being afraid to look a bit dumb to somebody that's got 20 years experience in the field. So asking a bunch of questions was something I kind of had to get over and just be like, hey, I don't know everything or really much of anything about this. So I'll ask questions as much as I can. But yeah, that would be my advice.
Was the Knowledge Center helpful to you?
Yes, the Knowledge Center was helpful. I probably should have looked at a bit more at the beginning of the program, as opposed to towards the middle. But a lot of that stuff is intuitive as well. But yeah, Knowledge Center was helpful.
Thank you, Lisa.
I would say, to start out with, really, I went through my QE a little bit fast. Just because I had been in real estate before, so I knew a lot of concepts. But I would say to study your QE and to really know the concepts in there and to understand them. And then also having a working knowledge of Excel. Because I'm finding as I'm doing more reports on my own, that I'm using Excel more and more and more. And so those would be my 2 recommendations.
And Lisa, I believe you're setting up your own business now, is that correct?
Yes.
In South Carolina?
Yes.
Okay. She told me she was still trying to refine her reports. I said, I've been at this 43 years and I'm still here. Yeah. But thank you for your answers. Now we're going to see if the audience has some questions they'd like to ask you. Go right ahead.
I'm Pete Montana. I'm one of the trustees of the foundation, but I also serve as vice chair of the Montana board. And I'm curious, did you take all your education, front load that, or did you do the education and the career program together, like simultaneously?
Yeah, it was something that you had to do prior to being able to enter the grant. So I got
All of it or just?
Yeah, so you could do just the licensed residential hours. I think that's 150 maybe, or the certified residential. So I went ahead and did the 200 hours of qualifying education, 3 months, and then hopped right into PAREA afterwards.
And then a follow-up to that is, did you find that it prepared you well for the exam?
I would say that the PAREA program helped with the exam more than the QE. For me personally, because like I said, I had gone pretty fast through my QE. So I learned a lot more through PAREA than I did in my QE.
I definitely had to go back and relearn or re-remember a lot of stuff from my QE. So I did, practice exams and all that kind of stuff, but a lot of the second half of the test, I'm assuming is the same pretty much everywhere, but the second half of the test was pretty much all that qualifying education, kind of terminology definitions. And I felt very confident with that after going back. With you at it.
Excellent. Congratulations, too.
Thank you.
Then you have to finish your QE, and AI does require them to upload their passing certificates and before they can come in.
Okay, good, excellent, thank you.
Yeah, and now I think the new rule is they have to take a little test too to make sure that they're ready.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Is that right? Okay.
Hi, Harold Dawson,
Okay.
trustees. My question is, what two or three things would you recommend to enhance and improve the program? For the participants?
Probably my biggest thing going in the real world after the fact was I felt a little unprepared in kind of the physical inspection portion of appraising. And it's gonna be something that's gonna be hard to do online. I would say because the Knowledge Center had, the Knowledge Center has somewhat of a video game like module where you're kind of walking through a property virtually and clicking kind of stuff as you go through. But as far as like physically measuring, walking through and making note of specific things that you need for certain underwriters, that was a little bit lacking and maybe something that could be improved on. The biggest thing for me getting out and doing some measurements was I never thought about it just as a person that wasn't in appraising, looking at a two-story building and saying, oh, it doesn't lay out exactly the same in this house upstairs and downstairs. And I can kind of pull some stuff over, but I might have to go back and measure some stuff inside and kind of piece it together. That's something that I didn't really expect, and I mean, probably should have. But yeah, that was a big thing.
Good question.
Yes.
Smith? I'm sorry, go ahead, do you have another question?
Well, I want to understand.
Oh,
Oh,
so I think what would be really beneficial is to have some type of ongoing mentor available to answer questions so that when we are in the real world, there's always questions that come up. And having somebody to maybe, just, hey, what about this? Is this normal? That, I think that would be very, very beneficial. Not necessarily, having them review reports or anything, but just someone to bounce ideas off of or bounce questions off of.
you're talking about after while you're working in the field.
Right, exactly.
That's where we want you to join your Principal Institute and go to our chapters and you'll learn from the other people. Okay. Smith, I think you had your hand up?
Yeah. Good afternoon, Smith Bernard, Board of Trustees member, also a member of the Appraisal Institute's Board of Directors. Thank you very much for coming. And if you can tell me, how long did it take you from the beginning to end? How long was your process?
As far as for individual reports or?
No, in terms of your QE and your completion of your career program.
Yeah, so I did my QE, it took about 3 months, it was June to September. And then PAREA, the main portion took me 5 months, and then the final assignments took me 3 months. And then I passed my exam 10 days later. So altogether, it took 11 months, starting from qualifying education to getting licensure.
Yeah,
For me, it took about a couple months to do the QE. And then, I started the pilot program for PAREA in, July of 2023, and I was finished by, June, mid-June of, 24. And then I think it was about 10 days as well, then I passed the licensing exam.
Now, I know that you mentioned that you're in the process of setting up your own shop. Have you worked at either, I also believe that you also mentioned that you're currently working with a company?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how has that integration been now that you've gone through that whole process?
Yeah, as far as working with the company, it's more of acclimating to their programming, their software, junk. So it's completely different, well, not completely different, there was similarities, but it was a different software program than I was used to. So getting used to that, kind of going through some training in that. And then I was lucky enough to, our company's based out of Virginia Beach. And then we have my one friend who's the appraiser in San Antonio, so I'm kind of just been under his wing in the meantime, and they've been gracious enough to essentially for the first 6 months, do like an hourly program with me, where I'm compensated hourly until my commission outweighs my hourly fee. So it's been very good for me, and being able to kind of just follow somebody around and say, hey, you need to look for this, you need to do this when you're writing reports. It's been great. I've just been over his shoulder for about 3 months. It's been great.
Same question.
So for me, I am in the process of setting up my own company, and so, and I'm a perfectionist, so, I'm in the process of doing a lot of sample reports and, you know, taking a lot of, CE courses, not just for CE purposes, but for my own learning. And so that's where I'm at right now.
And by the way, what was the name of your firm, sir, that you currently work with?
Yeah, Sin and Green and Associates.
Okay, other questions? Anyone? Frank?
I'm curious, and part of this is, my curiosity, but also for, I think that most of the trustees are fans, proponents, supporters of PAREA, but not everyone is, and probably not everyone there, and not everyone out in the netherworld listening live stream is a fan. I happen to be a fan, but I'm curious as to what property types were involved in your assignments. And I'm not only talking about the use, but you're talking about urban, suburban, rural type properties. What property types? And the other thing, I liked your comment there about measuring. Holy mackerel, I actually have to measure the place. I'm curious about verification of data. Do you have to call someone? Do you have to call a robot to verify your data?
As far as verification, no. So essentially, majority of the information is kind of handed to you in Excel spreadsheets or printouts of what the MLS looks like in that county. So it differs from assignment to assignment. One MLS might look completely different. So I'm looking for square footage somewhere over here in this assignment.
Welcome to the real world.
Yeah. Yeah, but so that was a big part of it. Remind me of your question.
Property types.
Yes, so property types, we had 2 to 4 unit properties, single family residential. What else?
Vacant, new construction. And
One more.
the
Yeah,
condos,
Yeah,
and attached single units and detached. And like I said, all different, large metropolitan areas, smaller areas. So different geographic markets and different property types.
Do you get anything where there's no comparable data?
That was a key part of some of those assignments was, hey, you don't have the information to, just comparative analysis. So you gotta be creative in, what's different methodologies you can use to get to an opinion value rather than just the easy, hey, there's 100 sales that have happened in 1 square mile radius in the past 6 months. So yeah, they make you work for
Yeah.
for that kind of stuff.
Thank you very much.
And your question, the questioning that you got with each assignment kind of gave you clues as to how to verify the data, right? What questions would you ask the client? So that's how they handle verification. And you didn't have one assignment, I believe, that was rural, or maybe more than one.
I think there was a couple that were in the same city that.
You've done more rural stuff than I have.
Okay, any other questions from the trustees? If not, oh, there's one there. Go ahead.
Yes, allows to be one trustee member, someone that is actually not an appraiser. The question is Liz?
Lisa,
Lisa.
Lisa. But I guess what went into the decision for you to open up your own shop there in branch, kind of what's your support and, kind of the structure of the company like?
Yeah, so- yeah, that's a great question. So I live in a smaller town in South Carolina. And so there's not a lot of options for companies to work for, other appraisers to work for. So that is the main reason why I'm going on my own. And was there something?
And what's your support system?
Well, I'm reaching out to other people, other appraisers and trying to get a support system going. So that's why I had suggested about having some type of mentorship after the PAREA program that would be able to bounce questions off of and have that support. So.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. In the back, Ellen Hummel.
And congratulations to both of you and welcome to the profession. I had a chance to talk with Chris a little bit last night at the reception. At least I'm curious, this is kind of a 2-part question. Have you started doing appraisals at this point yourself? Have you completed assignments outside of PAREA?
Sample appraisals, yes, not for clients.
Not for clients at this
No,
point.
yeah.
Okay, I know Chris has had the opportunity to be involved with clients. And Chris, before I ask my client's question, have you signed the appraisal reports yourself as the credential appraisers, or are you still getting a co-signature with an individual?
Yeah, I've signed a couple at this point. So basically one of the AMCs that we get business through proposed kind of a training program with the guy that I'm shadowing. So essentially treating me like a trainee, but still allowing me the kind of expectation is he's going to review my report before I send it in, but I have the opportunity to sign it myself and just come over there.
Okay, that goes to my final question, you partially answered it, I was curious about your experience with getting on appraisal rosters, and I know that Lisa, you'll still have to go through that, of what the reception has been, being able to give sample work or work history, and what kind of responses you've received from the potential clients.
It's been real quiet. It's understandable. There's plenty of, there's a lot of appraisers in my area. And, people don't want to take a big chance on somebody that has 0 years experience, as opposed to a lot of them have the minimum requirement of 5 years of appraisal experience. So a lot of times I can't even get a foot in the door with that kind of stuff. The trainee program for this one AMC has been good, and that should, after, I think, 4 or 5 assignments, if they feel comfortable with how they look, they said they're gonna give me, as much work as I can handle. We'll see if that happens. But yeah, it's a little difficult to kind of get your foot in the door initially. And I don't know if it's a different when you're at a big company and, maybe things funnel directly through the company and they can kind of hand it out to individual appraisers. Or I'm not sure if that's a way that things could occur, but maybe that's another route to go for some people that are getting into the business.
Thank you. Smith, I'm sorry, we have another. Go ahead, Smith, then I'll get to.
Lisa, have you looked into your liability insurance?
Yes, I do have E&O insurance.
Now, just to let you know that there is a program through our provider for the Appraisal Institute that has a special endorsement for PAREA graduates. So that's actually a very great benefit to take into consideration. Just let you know.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the advertisement.
Yes, Dave Dorick, I'm a member of the Foundation Board of Trustees. I'm curious about the volume of work that you do, practical, experiences you gain under PAREA. A typical appraiser gaining experience in the traditional manner will complete her residential certification somewhere in excess of 120 to 150 or more appraisal reports in that process. How many individual appraisal assignments did you complete in your learning? Because to complete the whole process in 8 months seems to be accelerating compared to what it takes an appraiser in the field working full-time as a trainee.
Before you answer that, I want to remind you that this is just licensed residential, and it hasn't gone through certified residential.
There's a slice. Okay.
Yes, so just, so go ahead. Tell them how many.
Oh, yeah, so there's 10 regular assignments and then 3 final assignments. But where it's going at a much slower pace, you're really kind of put through the ringer of, you have to do everything by hand. There's no technology that we're really using to kind of get some of the market trends, all that kind of stuff. Which in the real world has been drastically different. You can use a couple of the software programs and get some of this stuff in 5 minutes that would take a couple of days to do by hand in this assignment. Again, I think both of us probably worked pretty close to full-time hours in this program. So what was it, 8 months for qualifying education through PAREA. So yeah, I definitely understand. And ideally, I would have liked to be a trainee. Just a hard thing to kind of get your foot in the door. A guy that I did a podcast with was talking about his experience. He had called 50 different appraisers trying to become a trainee. Talked to about 40 something of them and couldn't get anybody to even let him serve the sex. It's an option for people like myself, but yeah, I definitely understand kind of the being a little bit wary of having somebody that's done 13 assignments as opposed to 150 over 6 months or whatever.
The average stat right now is 56 days per case study that the students are taking. They have to prove, did you have to prove your adjustments? You actually have to prove how you got that number?
Yeah.
Shocking. Okay, somebody else over here had your hand up?
Well, I hesitated to ask a question because it might feel like a trick question. I'm from New England where a lot of people have oil heat. 50 years ago, oil was so expensive that people would buy 1,000 gallons in the summer, put it in an underground oil storage tank. You can expect 1,000 houses before you see pipes coming out of the ground. But if you don't see those pipes coming out of the ground, it's a huge issue. Another thing is there was a lot of ledge in New England and radon comes up through the basement floor. A lot of places don't have basements. But those are things you almost never see. And this is kind of questions for you, it's kind of questions for PAREA in general. How do you think you're going to handle that? You see a couple of 2-inch pipes coming out of the ground or at radon evacuation system, either in the basement or somewhere outdoors.
Yeah, I think radon was actually covered in the program. The oil, I don't remember anything about that, but it's one of those things where in the position I'm at where I've been able to shadow somebody for a couple months, I would hope something like that would be something he would cover. Real world scenario, I might let other people answer that. If you're kind of going out and in someplace like New England, theoretically, I would assume you would have some kind of passing knowledge just growing up in the area. But again, if you're like me, military, you move to New England, yeah, you might just have to learn the hard way. I guess.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I know I'm not completely ready to, submit my own reports and have clients. That I do need somebody that can guide me and that I can bounce questions off of and such, so.
And if you have one of those case studies with that oil, send them our way.
Well, yeah.
And I have a hand at the very back there. John Brennan, okay.
Hey, Sandy, thank you. John Brennan, for the subcommittee. Yeah, with my interest in PAREA goes back a way. As a matter of fact, in this very town, I once saw a pool wearing virtual reality goggles on stage. My question particularly for Chris, because you've been working with the supervisor, I'm curious how much you might have experienced with your supervisor saying, hey, that's all well and good that you learned that, but that's not what we do out here in the real world, versus, wow, you learned that just the way we do this. Just kind of a rough idea of how that's gone.
Yeah, I mean, there is some of that. I think it is less because of how he likes things, and it's more of, if you turn this into an underwriter, you're gonna get a bunch of issues. And get it bounced back a few times, whereas sometimes it's the more simplistic and plugging in, showing data is kind of the way they want to see it. So there's been a bit of that. But yeah, I feel like there was a lot more writing and showing work that hasn't really been in the real world. It's more of, hey, have your work file. If they have questions, you can go back to that and say, hey, here's some data for it. What you're questioning about. So that's been kind of an adjustment, but there's not been any, hey, I don't care what you learned back there, we're doing it this way here. Not really had that issue so far.
Did you actually have to do work files with all of your case studies?
Yes.
And you had to keep them in your file?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, you have to submit all that
yeah.
to your mentor when you're sending in your report too, so.
So your last three were graded? Your last three assignments you did on your own were graded by someone and they had to pass their standard?
Yes.
Any other questions? Lynn?
Hi, Leah Lester. I'm the consumer advocate on the board of trustees. And I say that because my question is consumer focused. With consumers being really mindful about appraisal bias right now, do you feel that PAREA prepared you adequately to mitigate your own bias?
I'm not sure how to answer that.
Did you have questions or comments in there about fair housing? This is a word you shouldn't use. These
Yeah.
are things that.
Yeah, and I've kind of got that stuff in the real world too, where it's like, hey, these words might be kind of out of, it might be some kind of hidden biases in there. And then as far as like, we don't want to show any pictures related to families and that kind of stuff, that was all covered. I'm not sure about much deeper. I mean, you could probably offer more clarity. I'm also trying to pull back on stuff that it was however we want to.
The answers I do not recall.
I second what Chris is saying, completely, if there's, support type of word, our mentor would catch that and guide us in the right way to do that, to handle that, so.
Good question, Lynn. Sure. Question in the back?
Yes, hi, my name is David Beard. I may have missed this, but were you guys exposed to small income properties, 2 to 4 family?
Yeah, we had to do, 2 of the practice assignments and then 1 for a final assignment.
I got one more, as long as you talk about 2 to 4. Was everything you prepared a form report, or did you do something other than a form report?
Like a narrative report?
Yes,
No, everything was form.
okay.
Yeah, and I think you use the vacant land, you use the appraisal institute's
Yes.
report. And then the others, they use the general purpose, or if it was for a lender, then you had to use the 1004 UAD.
Okay.
Any other questions? We have time for just a couple more.
Just one other question, when you, after you completed PAREA and applied for licensing with your state agent, entity, did you have any problems or did it go smoothly?
Very smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous about what I assumed to be the first person in Texas to do it. I was like, I don't know how easy it's gonna be for me to say, hey, I did this online thing. But yeah, it was very easy. Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, South Carolina has had it already, they had the PAREA application already set up and everything, and I contacted the state, the board and he said, okay, well, this is the first time we're doing this, so it's new to me, just like it is to you, but yeah, everything went real smooth.
Did you pass your exam the first time?
Yes.
Everybody that's taken the exam so far has passed the first time.
That's it.
Smith?
To know that too, because I was hoping that the first time test taker score would be elevated because these folks are getting all the training from all different property types rather than some people that have training, might only be doing condos in South Florida,
Right.
exposed to nothing else. And so my hope was that the first time test taker score would go on.
Yes.
And that's good to know.
Yeah, thank you. I want to ask a question before I let Smith ask another one. Okay, Smith, you get a couple bites of the apple here.
Chris, I think you mentioned that you mentioned a buddy. Do you talk to any of your peers that are also going through the program?
No, I didn't really have any communication with anybody else that was going through the program other than after I got out of the program. I met someone briefly via Zoom, but yeah, I haven't really had any communication with anybody else.
Now, that was through the podcast, I believe?
Yeah, that was Market Moves with Jeff and
Right.
Mark, Burnett, and Jeff,
Yeah.
Marlene.
Same thing for you, Lisa. Have you met any of your peers going through the program?
I have not, no. First time we met Chris. So, yeah,
Well, now you have a peer.
that's right.
Okay, Kelly's gonna sidetrack her question. Go ahead.
How many people are enrolled in PAREA now?
Okay, right now we have 139 actively working in the program. We have over 2,000 that have registered interest that haven't finished their QE yet. We have 275 that have finished their QE and they're waiting to get in. We had 22 that entered the program yesterday for the first time. It's moving along. We've had to make some changes. We had to put a time frame on the participants, because we had some that entered and weren't progressing. They were just sitting there. So we had to say, you have to work because you're holding a spot that somebody else could take. So, we've had to make some changes, but very proud of these two and many more that have graduated and very excited about that. Yeah. Okay.
Those were my questions.
Those were your questions, yeah. Yeah, so.
Yes, I asked Larry if he's ever done a regression analysis, and he said, not if I could help it. Math major, and I would avoid it as well, but the real question is, more to you, Sandy, can existing appraisers take a real?
Yeah, as long as they're willing to pay for it.
I would charge him double.
Charge them double. You know, we could always learn something new.
Yeah.
I could go through it and learn something new, I'm sure. We have great mentors. There's 5 mentors. One is a supervisor of mentors. The 4 are working full-time with participants. Dana Thornberry is the supervisor. She takes on about 16 is the most she can handle because she's doing grading these assignments that they finish and doing other paperwork for the mentors. But, any other questions?
I would have answered that differently, but I'm not gonna say.
Thank you all for coming. I hope you learned something. I hope you feel a little more comfortable about PAREA, and thank you to our.
Thank you so very much. Before we take a quick 5-minute break, I just want to reiterate, the foundation made a $500,000 investment to AI PAREA to get it up and running. But the Appraisal Institute has invested at least quadruple of that. Hats off to the Appraisal Institute for valuing the future of this profession in investing in our future. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Startups are not easy. Startups are expensive. Startups have hiccups along the way, but we really, really appreciate your investment and congratulations to both of you. Everyone who cares about the future of this profession is standing with me and applauding you today. So congratulations. We are going to take a 5-minute break so that they can do some tech switch over, but please come back quickly because our next panel is up.
Awesome.